Welcome back. We want to turn now to breaking news here in Washington as Republican leadership is facing a result from moderates in the House. It is now all but certain that millions of Americans will see their health insurance premiums skyrocket in the new year. Next hour, the House is set to vote on a narrow health care reform bill that was cobbled together by Republican leadership. It does not include an extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies, and it has no viable path to pass the Senate. Moderate Republicans are furious after House leadership effectively blocked them from considering ways to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies as part of today's vote. A handful of those moderates today took the extraordinary step of joining forces with House Democrats in a maneuver to bypass House Speaker Mike Johnson entirely and force a vote to extend those Obamacare tax credits for 3 years. Some of those Republican lawmakers saying their leadership left them no choice.
We exhausted every effort to find an agreement within our conference. If folks chose not to find a path forward, they left us with no option but to sign that 3-year discharge. My view is doing nothing is the worst outcome, and that's why Brian Fitzpatrick, myself, Rob Bresnahan, and Ryan McKenzie signed the discharge.
You know, I believe very strongly in this issue, and you know, we keep getting this number thrown at us that it's only 7% of the population, but for that 7%, this is everything. I know some of those 7%, so I don't even like that narrative.
I will speak to one of those Republicans in just a moment. It's just the latest in a string of recent incidents where House Republicans have openly defied leadership, leaving Speaker Johnson today forced to defend his ability to control this conference. Take a listen.
I have not lost control.
Because this is the third time.
There are look, we have the smallest majority in U.S. history. Okay? These are not normal times. There are processes and procedures in the House that are less frequently used when there are larger majorities. And when you have the luxury of having 10 or 15 people who disagree on something, you know, you don't have to deal with it. But when you have a razor-thin margin, as we do, then all the procedures in the book people think are on the table, and that's the difference.
Amid the House drama, the Senate also remains deadlocked after voting down partisan plans from both parties last week, and little apparent appetite among leadership to forge a compromise.
The Jeffries discharge petition on a 3-year extension of the ACA now has the votes to be discharged. What do you think the Senate will do with that bill if it's sent over in January?
Well, we'll see. I mean, we obviously will cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't expect that they would probably, even if they have a sufficient number of signatures, I doubt they vote on it this week.
The damage has been done no matter what happens, because at this point, Republicans have made it impossible to prevent many Americans from paying more on their monthly premiums on January 1. And Republicans can't even say they tried to stop it.
All of this means an estimated 22 million Americans will see their health insurance premiums double on average in 2026. Joining me now from Capitol Hill is NBC's Melanie Zanona and NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Mel, let me start with you on the Hill. There are still some lawmakers and quite frankly some folks at the White House who are saying, well, it's still possible we could get an 11th hour deal here. What's the reality check?
Well, there are still some major hurdles to overcome. First of all, Johnson has 7 legislative days to actually schedule a floor vote in the House on that ACA extension. And because the House leaves on Friday for the holidays, that means they likely won't actually be voting on this until the new year after these subsidies have already expired. And second of all, this still needs to pass the Senate and be signed into law by President Trump. And as you outlined there, the Senate already rejected a similar proposal earlier this month, with GOP leader John Thune pouring cold water on the proposal once again today. But all of that being said, Kristen, I think the House actually moving on the ACA extension creates an entirely different dynamic for the Senate. And so the hope, at least among supporters of this effort, is that the House actions and movement combined with the pressure from constituents who start to feel the real world impacts of this in the new year could really put some pressure on senators to come together and make a compromise deal. But that is really what's going to need to happen if Congress really is going to address these ACA subsidies.
And talk about this dynamic that's unfolding with some moderate Republicans really turning up the heat on Speaker Johnson, who we just heard there defend his leadership and say that, yes, he still has control of his conference.
Yeah, there has been some real angst and frustration in the Republican ranks, not just with moderates, but really broadly across the conference. But what we've seen with the more moderate Republicans is that they feel like their priorities and needs aren't always listened to, despite the fact that they're the ones who are going to determine whether or not Republicans are in the House majority next year. So some Republicans are still expressing frustration. Others, though, are saying ultimately they did what they needed to do to best represent their districts. And so essentially no hard feelings. Just listen.
Hearing, did he put us in a bad spot? We live and die by our own decisions. So he made his decision, we made ours.
He's got to deal with 219 personalities and viewpoints, including mine. And, you know, I think a lot of times he's able to get there and move the conference. This time he wasn't.
He needs to do better. He needs to allow for a vote that both addresses the short and long-term issues of Obamacare. Republicans need to step up and stop just complaining about the problem, but also provide some solutions to the broken Democrat system.
But as you know, Kristen, this is now the third time that a discharge petition has succeeded in the House under Johnson's watch, which is just a remarkable act of defiance and rebellion here in the House, which is why Johnson is so defensive right now, insisting he has not lost control of the House, noting he does have a historically tight margin. This is bound to happen, but no doubt the frustration and angst is boiling, especially as we get closer to the midterms.
And Mel, you take me to my next point, because, of course, if this does not get resolved, this is going to be the centerpiece of the midterms, right? How would it play for each party?
That's exactly right. I mean, Democrats are already signaling they're planning to make this a political cudgel in the midterms if they fail to actually extend the Obamacare subsidies. And moderate Republicans have warned that they think they're going to lose their seats if Congress doesn't act, which potentially could cost Republicans the entire majority. So no doubt health care is going to take center stage in the 2026 midterms, along with the general issue of affordability. Increasingly, though, we're hearing Republicans speaking out and saying President Trump needs to do more to address the issue of affordability. He can no longer just dismiss it as a Democratic hoax. Kristen.
All right. Melanie Zanona from Capitol Hill. Thank you so much. Gabe, let me head over to you at the White House. Let's pick up on that final point by Mel. This idea that from the perspective of Republicans, President Trump hasn't necessarily been as engaged as they would like him to be in this process. What are your sources telling you? Will he get engaged at the 11th hour? We're literally heading into the 11th hour as we speak. Or is this something he's going to pick up in the new year?
Well, hey there, Kristen. Look, President Trump at this point appears to be happy to let Speaker Johnson take these arrows, right? When you talk to White House officials, and we heard from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, earlier this week, essentially saying that, yes, that the president will be in consultation with Republicans as this process moves forward. But really, when you speak with White House officials, they really do try and change the subject here, that the president in the new year will do his best to try and lower health care costs. They switch to the idea of the president disliking Obamacare and having to find some fix for that, although they haven't offered an exact plan for this. And this is a subject that we expect to even hear from the president tonight, talking about lowering costs for Americans. But you're right, Kristen, he has not gotten engaged in this process, and he appears to be letting the messiness here fall at the feet of Congress, and specifically House Speaker Mike Johnson.
Gabe, follow up on that point, if you would. Flesh out a little bit more. What are you anticipating the president will talk about tonight? What do you think his tone's going to be? He's going to be talking about the economy. We just heard him talking about that in Pennsylvania. What exactly do you think we'll hear?
Well, Kristen, you know as well as anybody, the president is a showman. He knows the significance of a prime time address, 9 p.m. Eastern, in front of millions of viewers. And he wants to use this megaphone, according to White House officials, to really tout what his administration views as his successes of his second term so far. He was actually asked about this a short time ago on the tarmac as he was returning from a dignified transfer ceremony. Let's listen to what he said.
Well, I think the message this evening is we inherited a mess, and we've done a great job, and we continue to, and our country is going to be stronger than ever before very soon.
So certainly, Kristen, this all comes as the president is facing backlash over his handling of the economy. A new poll out today from NPR, PBS Marist says that only 36% of Americans approve of his handling of the economy. That backs up other recent polling that we've seen so far. So certainly the administration viewing this as a chance to take back the narrative, even though his message on affordability so far has been muddled, Kristen.
And Gabe, quickly before I let you go, Vice President J.D. Vance was in battleground Pennsylvania yesterday. Of course, President Trump was just there last week. Is this a preview of things to come? President Trump has said he's going to be out on the campaign trail in 2026. Will the vice president be out there with him?
Well, look, we keep hearing from the White House that, yes, the president will be out there selling his economic policies to Americans. We have yet to see that, at least on a large scale so far. But when it comes to being a messenger, and the question of whether Vice President Vance may be a better messenger than the president on the issue of affordability, look, White House officials view President Trump as the best messenger for his policies. However, he does tend to go off script, and he has over the last several weeks, referring to this issue of affordability as a Democratic hoax. There is some acknowledgement within Republicans, within White House officials, that it is an issue they're going to have to start talking about. Will be interesting to see exactly how he threads that needle tonight and whether he veers off script in this high-stakes address in front of millions of people here at the White House, Kristen.
It will indeed. We'll be listening closely. Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much for joining us from the White House. Joining me now is Republican Congressman Mike Lawler of New York. He was one of the 4 Republicans who signed on to that discharge petition to force a vote on a 3-year extension of Obamacare subsidies. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Kristen.
So let's start right there. Your decision to sign on to this discharge petition. What is the exact message that you are trying to send?
Well, look, after the shutdown that Democrats engineered for 43 days, I sat down in a good faith bipartisan effort to come up with a compromise and to extend the ACA tax credits, the enhanced premium tax credits, with reforms. We put forth 2 bills and tried to work with House Republican leadership to allow for an up or down vote. And unfortunately, after a long back and forth, we just could not get to an agreement within our conference to move it forward. And so I and Brian Fitzpatrick, Ryan McKenzie, and Rob Bresnahan really were left with no alternative but to sign the 3-year clean extension to force a vote and to actually advance legislation forward so that ultimately we could get a bipartisan compromise. And I do believe if the bill comes to the floor, not only will it pass, but it'll give the Senate the ability to come back with a bipartisan compromise and actually get something passed into law.
Just to be very clear, if that bill comes to the floor, you will vote yes on the broader bill to extend Obamacare subsidies for 3 years, Congressman?
Yes.
And the fact that it can't come to the floor immediately, that's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. In other words, there's a 7-day period, effectively means that these Obamacare subsidies are going to expire. Is that how you see it? Is that imminent at this point?
Well, look, even if we were able to pass it this week, and we are pushing for a vote this week, we have asked Speaker Johnson to put the bill on the floor. And we are trying to work, through this process to get a vote before we leave. But even if it passed this week, it would still then require the Senate to move. And the Senate just voted this exact measure down last week. So it's going to require bipartisan compromise, which has been my point from the start, and why, I really did not want to sign this 3-year discharge, because I don't want a messaging bill. I want a lawmaking exercise. I want it to pass and become law. And I know it's going to require reforms and, inclusive of income limits. Somebody making $600,000 should not be subsidized for their health care. It's going to require insurance reforms. Kristen, remember, since Obamacare took effect, healthcare premiums have skyrocketed 96%, and insurance company profits have exploded by 2,000%. All right. So they continue to make, billions upon billions of dollars, and yet everybody's health insurance premiums continue to rise. There needs to be real reform of the insurance companies. It's part of the reason why I've pointed out, for instance, United Healthcare owns one of the largest providers in the country. That should not happen. Insurance companies should not be owning providers. There's a clear conflict of interest. So we have to get to the big root cause of why healthcare premiums are spiking.
And Congressman, before we get into the nitty-gritty about that, let me just, House leadership is still planning to vote on their health care plan with no extension of the Affordable Care Act. Just to be very clear, the Affordable Care Act subsidies, are you planning to vote no on that piece of legislation?
No, I will be voting yes on that bill because it actually starts to enact some important reforms. For instance, PBM reform and PBM transparency, associated health plans, which will allow small businesses, self-employed individuals to be able to pool together and purchase insurance at a lower rate. CBO has already scored it and said it would reduce health insurance premiums across the country by 11%. So there's actually some really important reforms there that should advance forward.
But Congressman, doesn't voting for the bill that's going to go to the floor undercut your broader effort to get a bipartisan piece of legislation passed through both chambers?
We went to the Rules Committee. We put amendments forward. They were not ruled in order. That is why I signed the 3-year discharge to force a vote on the ACA premium tax credit extension. So we are doing this dual track. I'm not giving up the fight here. I have, bucked my own leadership to force a vote. And that is the tool that was available to me when I couldn't get consensus out of our majority.
So let me ask you about leadership. You were seen speaking with Speaker Johnson on the House floor. He described your conversation as intense fellowship. Is that how you would describe it? What did you say to him specifically, Congressman?
Listen, I'm Irish, Italian, Catholic from New York. I'm blunt, if nothing else. And, we had a very direct conversation, the group of us. Look, I like Mike Johnson very much. We have a very good relationship. He has an impossible task of managing 219 other personalities, myself included, and trying to pull together 218 votes for every bill. And sometimes you're just not going to be able to reach an agreement. This is one of the few instances where that has happened. And so I and Brian and Ryan and Rob did what we had to do on behalf of our constituents, our districts, to force a vote. And again, we're going to agree to disagree, but we obviously are working to advance this, and we're going to continue the dialogue with the Speaker on how to address this issue, that it actually becomes law, which is what I'm most interested in.
And do you have confidence in Speaker Johnson, Congressman?
I do. He's done a great job. And look, people can agree or disagree on an issue. He is doing his level best. He has been nothing but honest and forthright with me. And even if, I'm blunt and direct, the bottom line is I'm focused on finding a solution on an issue that matters. That has no bearing on my relationship with him.
And Congressman, you are mapping out what you see as the core problems of Obamacare. And the root question remains, why hasn't the president, why haven't Republican leadership put forward a plan to actually replace Obamacare before now? Should it have been proposed when the president first took office again, for example?
Well, again, we are working through this process. We have a bill on the floor today that is starting the process of reforming this system. I'm not interested in repeal and replace. I want to fix the problems. And when you look at some of the problems within the system, it is primarily driven by the insurance companies. Remember, Kristen, they're the ones that wrote Obamacare. They're the ones that worked with Democrats to write that law. And so when you see the fact that they have increased their profits by 2,000% over these 15 years, and meanwhile, everybody's health insurance premiums continue to spike, that's a problem. And by the way, Kristen, even if we pass this extension,
of the enhanced premium tax credit. We're only talking about 7%. So the other 93% continue to see their health insurance premiums skyrocket because this system is broken. That is why we are going after real reforms on PBMs, real reforms on allowing for associated health plans. We need catastrophic coverage. We need to allow purchase across state lines. We need to deal with workforce issues. We have a shortage of doctors and nurses. That really is at a core of why people can't get access in many parts of the country. So there's a lot of work ahead, and I am focused on what we can substantively do in a bipartisan way to get that done. It's not going to be fixed overnight, but that's why, to me, this is dual track. The ACA extension on the enhanced premium tax credit with reforms coupled with larger reforms for the whole system.
All right, Congressman Mike Lawler, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kristen.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.